I'm Dick Moberg, and welcome to our interview series. A lot of interesting people pass through our doors who are doing amazing work in brain monitoring. We bring them into our studio, put a mic on them, and get the personal stories you don't normally hear. We hope you enjoy them. Hi, I'm Dick Moberg, and welcome to our studio here. We have a special guest today. This is our youngest guest so far, and it's Florian van Leeuwen. Look at that. I mean, his last name's a little tricky to pronounce. And I met Florian earlier this year at the TBI classification meeting in Washington, D.C. And I think we were in a hotel lobby, and he said, we talked about our company and him, and he said, well, it'd be really cool to come work with you. And I said, well, why not, And it's one of those things you say that you probably never going to happen. And here he is, and it's worked out great. And we've really enjoyed having you here. Florian's a PhD student in Amsterdam. And you're not in Amsterdam.
Utrecht.
He's in Utrecht now. Okay. But you live in Amsterdam.
I do.
Okay, so you're a PhD student that lives in Amsterdam. Yes. We'll get into that in a bit. But, it's been great having him here. And what we're going to do for this podcast is we're going to look at neuroscience, at where the future is from the perspective of an old guy like me and a young guy like Florian. And I thought it would be great to hear what he thinks the future is going to be in this field of neuroscience, and particularly in like brain injury and neurocritical care. And we'll talk to him a little bit about his experience here in the company as well. So, Florian, welcome.
Thank you.
And I should tell people you've been living in my house, in my guest room.
Correct.
And the fact that I never see you has been an indication that you're enjoying Philadelphia. and I'm really happy. I'm really happy you're getting around. So that's wonderful. So let's start out. First of all, why don't you tell people what are you doing, your academic career, and what you're interested in, and then let's talk about the future. Right.
Right. So I come from a background in statistics. I did a master in statistics, and then I worked for a hospital at the biostatistics department, where I focused mainly on creating clinical prediction models with a focus on traumatic brain injury. And currently I'm pursuing a PhD in statistics, where I focus again on creating prediction models, but then for all types of complex data sets. So it can be very big data sets, or it can be time series data sets. And I have a specific interest in applying those models to medical cases.
That's great. And I'd have to say, you gave a great seminar last week with some of our colleagues from both Penn and Jefferson were here, and it was very well received. And I think some of the models are really very innovative, and I think they have a great potential for prediction. So I think it's really interesting work you're doing. And so where do you see this going?
Well, when I look around here, I see there's a lot of focus on collecting a lot of data. And now I think there's a big movement in the modeling of data to use these big data files to make a prediction for a patient. And with the focus on individual patients, I think that's kind of maybe the next step that we want to take. So how can we use all this data that you derive for a patient to really make a precise prediction for that specific patient? So I would say kind of that's the aim. That's what we're going for, to help clinicians make difficult decisions with these prediction models. Yeah.
So it's going away from the one size fits all with the model. So and I think that makes a lot of sense. One of the things we've been interested, obviously, is in multimodal monitoring, and people in the past are trying to predict ICP. The question is that the thing you want to predict? Or is it more predicting an outcome with multiple data inputs? And that may make the model a little trickier, but do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, sure. I mean, in general, I would say more information is better. And well, in the case of ICP, it's always kind of the question is that really what you're interested in, or is it the thing you observe and it's associated with the latent factor that you're really interested in? Mm-hmm. But if we think about it in kind of a latent space, then you would want to have all the observed variables which are somehow connected to your latent variable and can somehow help you make a prediction. So in the project I'm doing now, I'm only using ICP data, but it's a very naive approach because obviously we have a lot more data which we could use. It's just that some of the models find it very difficult to use multiple data sources. So it is also kind of a challenge, a modeling challenge to be able to use all the available data and to make a better prediction because you cannot really make a worse prediction with more data because you can always leave the extra data out.
Right, right. Well, so what needs to evolve? Is it the technology behind models? Is that what needs to evolve, or is it something else, or is it condensing the multimodal data into some other descriptor that can then go into a model? I mean, how do you see this kind of the pipeline of data working to get more multimodal input?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think in these multimodal models, it's the type of data, it's very difficult data. It's extremely complex. So you need a large model which is able to handle different types of data sources, which then again makes the model very complex. Yeah. But you are able to do that. I mean, you have these large models like ChatGPT who can now handle any type of data, but these models we are not able to train those, right? They are way too big, they're way too hard to implement. So you would want to have something more local, which you can use. And maybe a first step would be to kind of reduce the dimensions of this big data set to something smaller, and then use that as input for your model. But it's still very hard, and I think the interpretation then will be a lot more difficult, and which is something which I feel like clinicians really like, and I guess everybody really likes it, to know how a model derives a prediction.
Yeah.
And that can be hard.
Yeah. So where do you see this? Well, first of all, your PhD, you're just starting out.
Correct.
At your old age, you're just starting out. Yeah. So, and you have a couple more years to go, 4 more years or something like that. So, so what do you hope to accomplish in the 4 years? And then we'll talk about the future. Right?
Yeah.
So, what do you want to do?
Well, there's a lot I want to do.
What can you do?
Yeah, I think that's a better question. What can you do? I think part of my research, I would like to focus on kind of the modeling aspect. How can we make models which predict well with difficult data? And then also part of my research, I want to focus on kind of the uncertainty. So when we derive a model, let's say here or in another hospital, we usually do not want to use it only locally, but we want to use it also in other settings. And it's very difficult because other settings give more uncertainty because the doctors are not the same, the protocols are usually not the same, maybe the measuring devices are not the same, so the model will not react the same way to each setting. Maybe it will perform a little bit better here and a little bit worse there. And this kind of uncertainty, I think it's very important to think about before you implement the model. Because if we see that the model can work either very poorly or very well or somewhere in between, then maybe we shouldn't use that model in this setting. There's just too much uncertainty for a patient. So I think that's also a direction which I really want to get more into.
That makes a lot of sense. To what extent can, there's a lot of databases a lot of data that's been collected on TBI over the years. It's been collected under different circumstances. I mean, you could put all the TBI data together and you have TBI data, but there's still a lot of heterogeneity in there.
Yeah.
So one question would be, is that data usable? The second would be, what else can we do? If it needs to be better data, what can we do?
I feel like you said, there's so many different TBI databases, and now with the rise of these models, which are very good but require lots of data, you kind of almost have to link up these data sets. If you want to derive some sort of global model first, and then maybe for your setting kind of make a local model, then I think it makes a lot of sense for the global model to kind of pool all the data sets. Then you do run into all these problems that, well, there's no harmonization, maybe the sampling rates are different, or So you do need to solve those things, but I still believe that you can gain a lot by using these different data sources.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that comes to mind, I mean, the nice thing is, well, Andrew Maas, from Holland, I guess he was the one that kind of came up with the idea of common data elements, so there is some kind of common language between there. But I think if you look at the common data elements for ICP, it's like, I remember seeing like an average ICP for a day or something, which kind of meaningless.
Yeah.
So, it just seems like we would need something a little more refined. And maybe to me, one thing that would be an interesting outcome of maybe some of the work you're doing with some others, maybe Shubhaya in Boston, everything is come up with how do we collect this data, and not only as part of a trial, but every patient that comes in the hospital, it would be nice to be able to collect that. Just as their record, if that's possible in the future. I think it's going to be more and more possible to collect the physiology because memory gets cheap, and you can store that stuff now. So what do you think about that? I mean, some national or international effort to preserve this data without having to set up a huge clinical trial. To me, that probably makes some sense to try to do.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, data obviously is very valuable, and we really want to help patients. And I think an easy way to help patients would be to start with proper data collection. Mm-hmm. Because if you streamline your data collection, then you have so many less problems down the road.
Yeah, as we all know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it would be well worthy of someone's time or many people's time to spend on like what data will you really need for the things you want to do, and then streamline it to do it across all the centers or all the hospitals that you use, so you can get one common database. Yeah.
I've been kind of struggling with this too. I know in some areas, and I don't have an example in mind, some areas of hospital care, there's, in the US, I think there's like a federal mandate to collect certain data from the patients. It's just, they realize it's so important that whenever you come in with that condition, they collect data. I would think TBI is at the top of the list because there's so little real good data, particularly in ICU care. And the disease is so heterogeneous that this would be, I think that's almost the way to make progress. Mm-hmm. And I think it's people like you who are really data scientists and, background in statistics and modeling that are going to turn that data into something useful. So I have a lot of hope for you in your thesis. So you're not going to be wasting your time, I think. So I think that would be really good, and I'm sure we'll be staying in touch for that and everything. What do you see? What do you want to do when I don't want to say what do you want to do when you grow up, but compared to me, yeah, what do you want to do what do you think? After your PhD, what do you?
That's interesting question. I think that I cannot give the best answer right now because I feel like when you're done with your PhD or almost done with your PhD, you probably know better what you want to do. But if I enjoy it a lot, then maybe I will kind of continue that route.
In academics?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe I think that I want to kind of focus a little bit more on the practical work like you're doing here. Mm-hmm. Then maybe I stop after the PhD and then try to go into that direction.
Yeah. Well, that's actually a good segue to talk about what, I think one of the things we wanted to talk about is, you've been in an academic setting for your long career, and you've come here for a month and gotten to see a different side of things where we're considered industry. I mean, I think we still have one foot in academia at the company, and that's why I like it here. Mm-hmm. But we're really focused on, I guess, the practical side of things, and how do you collect data? How do you put it on the cloud? How do you make tools that people can then use on the data? That's kind of our focus as opposed to treating patients. So what's your experience been like here? And you can be honest.
Yeah, I will.
So what's it been like? What's different? What do you think?
Well, I think there's a lot of differences. Do see that here there's definitely a strong link with academia. So I do notice it for all the people that I see here. Like if I talk to them, they understand what we're doing or what I'm doing. But it's funny because the first week I was here, I wanted to use some of the ICP data, and I did not fully understand how difficult it would be for me to kind of get to the data. Because what's common for me is that people just send me the data file, or they say, well, you can find it here or somewhere. But here I have to, connect to a cloud and then attach some things to the cloud and do. So it's a lot of nice things for me to learn and to understand of how, I guess, such a practical cloud system is implemented. And it's also good to see that it's, the data not always comes on a silver platter for you. Sometimes you have to do a little work for it. And I think it's also been really nice that, people have showed me around how to do many things here. And also to see that, not all data is kind of clean. Sometimes you end up with data which is just very noisy. And what do we do then? So it's been very nice to talk with people here and to discuss how should we proceed in that case.
Yeah, well, that's good. Your experience here is probably my experience when I started this company. I didn't know a whole lot about cloud. I knew how to collect data from my last product, and the cloud was kind of new to me a bit. And I was kind of asking those questions. When I thought of cloud, I just thought about, where my pictures are stored from my iPhone. Oh, you just drag it on there and you drag it off. It's a little different when you understand what goes behind that,
right.
And the data in that, and it's a whole different architecture for your software than making something that's in a hardware device, collecting data. When it's on the cloud, it's a totally different way of doing it. That software can now live on any cloud and all the permissions and all this stuff. And it's been an eye opener for me, and there's a lot of work to it.
Yeah.
So and we have a lot of smart people here, so that's good. That's good. And so what else? Anything else you want to talk about? I mean, we're certainly got to stay in touch.
Definitely. Well, I do think it's worth noting that, you have this thing with data, but there's also kind of what I really appreciate here is that the practical view. So when I talk about the project that I'm doing, then, I get comments from, okay, so how will you implement it? And that's a link which I think is often missing. So, when you read these theoretical papers, or they say, wow, we have derived the best model, there is not often a paragraph with how to implement the model, because maybe sometimes it's a model which cannot be implemented or it's very hard. So I think it's really nice to keep those things in the back of your mind when you develop a model, because in the end, we're kind of going, for some models, you're going for implementation. Mm-hmm. So if you don't keep that in mind, then you might end up with a very good model, which is completely useless. Yeah. So I do think that's also a very nice aspect of
Yeah, and I mean, that's interesting you picked that up, because I think that's probably one of the big differences between industry and academia. And it's kind of like, how do you earn your paycheck? And, if you're in industry, you earn your paycheck by developing things that, you can sell, right? Or that have value enough to where somebody's going to buy it. And then the profits from that pay your paycheck. In academics, it's training, and it's, discovering new things and all that, and it's mostly through grants and stuff that pay you. And so it's kind of that, how does the money flow, mm-hmm. that instills that. So everything we do here has to have a practical outlet. And it's interesting you picked that up, because it's a good way of saying it. Yeah, so that's really cool. Good. Anything else?
I think that's it. I don't know.
Well, we've really enjoyed having you here, and I'm hoping this will be the first of other visits. You come to see us, and we'll see you. It's the same group of people that move around the world at these TBI conferences, and I see people who are here in Philadelphia, a mile away from me, and I only see them in some foreign country.
Right.
So But so I'm sure we'll see you, quite a bit at these meetings, and I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to staying in touch, and
Sure.
and in 4 years I'm going to show you this video at the end of your PhD, and we'll see how things panned out.
Yeah.
Right?
Sounds good.
Good. Well, thanks very much.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Cool. Good.